Welcome back to this week's episode of Hawkeye Garage, and we are going to finish doing all the mechanical installing of the FJ Cruiser E-Locker in the back of the 4Runner. We're going to get it all bolted in, sealed up, and probably test the mechanics of it, test the actuator because the wiring's not run yet. But we'll be able to make sure that it is functioning back and forth. So stay tuned. Last week I left you hanging with all of the cutting and drilling and tapping done and the third member installed, well, set into place anyway, and it fit first time around. So that is a huge weight lifted off of my shoulders, knowing that all my holes were drilled properly and my cuts were made properly. So since then I've been just cleaning all the surfaces and starting to reinstall things, and that's what I'm gonna show you now. First of all, I guess, here's the actuator. I took this all back apart and I tried to get some new O-rings for it from the hardware store, but that was a no-go. They make kits for this, but they're really expensive and they all seem to leak anyway. A lot of people use Permatex, so that's what I did. I cleaned all the mating surfaces and cleaned the O-rings up, and then I put Permatex in with the O-rings, sealed it all back up, and yeah, it should be good to go now. I tested it with jumper cables just quickly to make sure that it's still spinning, and I think I got it back to reset to the position where we can install it. Here is the third member without the actuator, obviously. Got my sensor in place, and I'm going to drop a part number down below for that sensor. That was actually kind of hard to find the correct sensor because there's a ton of them that look the same for Toyotas that aren't the same, so I have figured that out for you guys. I also have that plug figured out for you guys, and mine did not come with this little cap that covers the pin that comes out. I have the part number for that as well. Don't order that from a Toyota dealership. I called, they wanted like 60 bucks. I got it from Toyota Parts Direct or something online. Again, I'll leave a link for that. I think it was $16. Got that all sealed up into place. I put some thread sealant on these bolts because actually the bottom one goes kind of into the case. So moving, so these are sleeves that are inside the axle. I'll show you when we get down there. But I pulled those out, make sure there's no shaving stuck on them, and you know, they were a little grimy anyway, so went ahead and cleaned those up as well. Here is the diff housing, all cleaned up. All the studs are put back in with thread sealant. And so those sleeves that I showed you before, those slide into there, and you can pry them out with a screwdriver. There's like a couple clips that retains them. So I've cleaned everything out really well. I linked a write-up in last week's video on a forum, kind of a pretty thorough explanation of how to do all this. For the two holes over here, technically you need a stud, a really long stud, but I couldn't find the right part number for those either, so I'm just going to use bolts. It'll be perfectly fine. There's nothing back here that's going to get in the way. I'll thread seal them together. And it also says that you need two other studs, which you don't need. So out of all the studs that comes out, you can reuse all of them. There's two different lengths. There's shorter ones and then slightly longer ones. There's the two slightly longer ones you need are this one, so third from the end, and this one, also third from the end. The rest of them you can use the short ones, and then these other two holes right here are from the old diff. You won't need to reuse those. You can put a little bit of Permatex in there when you seal up the diff. And now I think it's time to scooch these axle shafts back out a little bit more, lay our bead of silicone, and get the diff set in there. Yes, we have a working, well, at least like on jack stands working locker. So I have the switch basically hot wired to jumper cables, but it's fused, and so the unlock is lit up because I have wired it as though the headlights are turned on just so that I could see that I had power to that. And I've bypassed, well, the indicator switch just because I don't have those wires spliced in anymore. I basically have the lock hot wired. Anyway, that's not important. So right now it's unlocked, and now it's locked, and I've checked, you know, I've spun the pinion and the axles and stuff. It's actually engaged, and now it's disengaged, and it sounds awful, but I mean, it's put together correctly, and it's all greased up, considering I had to take it apart, and the condition that I got it in. I won't mention the place that I got it from, because I did get it for a good price, and they were good people to deal with. They load tested it, and so it wasn't burnt up or anything, but it also wasn't functioning. But I paid a good price for it, and I cleaned it up, and it works now, so that's all that I care about. Yeah, so we've got, I would imagine when this has got fluid in it, it will be much quieter. So I need to put some thread sealant on a couple more bolts, put the drive shaft on, fill it up with fluid, and everything else is bolted together, and it will be time to test it. And just like that, we are done. Well, more or less. There's still wiring to do anyway. But I have tested it. It's pretty anticlimactic because I can't actually turn like my front all of the traction control off, so the power cuts out or whatever, but it does function. So there's that. And I don't have this for doing burnouts or major rock crawling stuff. It's basically a security blanket for just getting out of sticky situations or needing to get through something that I don't really have a chance to bypass, or, you know, because we usually go wheeling in a group. So it's just to get us there and back, if you will. So I never had a vehicle with a selectable locker, so needless to say, I'm extremely excited to have that. That pretty much wraps up this mini series on doing the install. I'm going to drop a couple links and part numbers down below. I'm going to drop a link for taking apart one of those actuators. The guy does a really good job of that. The only thing that I would do differently is when he takes it apart, he pulls the electric motor shaft out first, and then he pulls that big plate, well, you know, the softball size plate off. I would do it in reverse. Pull that plate off, because that's going to remove the big gear, and then the electric motor shaft will come out, and then do it opposite, putting it back together. Put that shaft in there, then put that big gear on top. It just makes more sense. I actually am not 100% sure how he got those apart the way that he did, because they mesh together. So there's also, when you have to put the brushes back together for the electric motor, use teeny tiny little zip ties to cinch the electric motor brushes back against the springs, and then that shaft will drop in pretty easy, and then you can just kind of pop those off or snip them very carefully and pull them out. That worked really well for me. So, and then whatever part numbers and links I haven't linked in the past couple of videos, and this will all be in a playlist, so you have all of the resources all together in one kind of menu. Until next week, which I'm not exactly sure what video will be next week. It will just kind of depend on if I can get some things finished, or we might have a little sit-down chat about some other things. But follow the links down below for Instagram and Facebook, and that will keep you up to date with what I've got going on with this and the Jeep and everything else. And comments, questions down below, always email, feel free to do that. And until next time, thank you for watching, take care, stay safe, stay healthy, and continue doing off-road stuff. Thank you for watching, goodbye.